I'm composed. Hello Ice and Fire nerds, this is Chris and this is going to be my Game of Thrones Season 6 Episode 2 breakdown. There will be spoilers, there will be speculation. I'm relaxed, I'm calm. This was a hype-ass episode. Man, this shit was dope.
Damn, that shit was dope.
It was like the best Game of Thrones episode I've seen since like Hard Home. I mean, Kit Harington, you a lying motherfucker. Man, we knew, but we didn't know, but we kind of knew, we pretty much knew, but now man, let's go, let's roll this shit. Alright, let's jump right in. This episode was damn good. It was packed full of stuff. This is really where it starts to come together. Unlike episode 1, which I kind of expected to be a setup episode, it was more like season 5, episode 10.5. This was a damn Game of Thrones episode right here. And we're at a point in the story where it's really, really exciting. All the shit's kind of coming together. We opened up with Bran and Bloodraven, and right off the bat, they are both in a vision together. They both had their eyes rolled in the back of their head. They are at a flashback in Winterfell, and we see young Ned and young Benjen. I was thinking this might be a young Sir Roderick. What was really cool about this is we saw Lyanna come in on a horse. To me, this was huge for Jon Snow's parentage reveal at some point, maybe next episode with the Tower of Joy scene coming up. We saw Lyanna come in on a horse and she's riding circles around these boys literally, and I think that's to put her out there. Also with Lyanna riding in on a horse, this is kind of like a shout out to the books here as far as the Night of the Laughing Tree story. For you show only watchers, it was a thing in the book where at a tourney of Harrenhal, there was a certain knight, they didn't know who it was, but the knight defeated several other knights whose squires had picked on Howland Reed and kind of beat him up a little bit, and nobody knew who this knight was. They ran off. A lot of people suspect it was Lyanna Stark because it was always said she was a tomboy like Arya. She rode horses very well, and that's really all it takes for jousting. So I think there was kind of a shout out to that little piece as well, that little mystery in the books. There's no reason to bring Lyanna in the story at all if it's not to put her out there as Jon's mother. It wasn't a Shard Dane riding up on a horse. It was cool to actually see her alive. This, famed figure we talked about, even though she was a young girl. She's talking to her brothers in the yard as they train, and then she goes over and we see a young Hodor, and Hodor's name is Willis.
What you talking about, Willis?
Willis, who would have thought Willis? But he's already kind of a big dude. He was actually going to go spar with Ned and them. Lyanna tried to talk him into it, but then old Nan, we see old Nan come out, a young old Nan, or a younger old Nan. And Bran's really loving this. He's at home. He's feeling like, they're all happy and everything's good at this time period. There's no problems going on. Everybody's in the yard playing, and they're happy and content, and their family's together. And then Bloodraven says it's time to go. And Bran's like, no, I want to stay around a little bit longer. And then Bloodraven kind of touches him on the shoulder, and boom, they're back in the cave. They open their eyes. It's just like swimming under the sea. If you stay too long, you'll drown. So he's basically saying you can't be in these visions too long, or it's going to be really, really bad for you. But what was really cool about this scene here, I don't know if you picked up on it, was when Ned was kind of beating Benjen down a little bit against his little shield there, he knocked him on the ground, and Ned's trying to help Benjen learn, and he says the exact same line that Jon Snow said to Ollie as he was training him last year at Castle Black: keep your shield up or I'll ring your head like a bell. So that was pretty cool to see kind of a parallel there with Ned saying the same exact line that Jon did while they're both training somebody to fight. And then back in the cave there, we see a child of the forest. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be Leaf. If it is, she looks completely different. Hodor takes Bran outside, and Mira's out there kind of contemplating things, and she's like, we're supposed to fight a war, but we're going to fight it what, in that cave? And Leaf, if that's supposed to be Leaf, the child of the forest, basically says, look, he needs your help. He can't stay here forever. So they are going to leave the cave, and he's going to need you, and he's going to need you out there especially. So all this combined with Bran talking about, Bloodraven saying there's a war coming, and Mira talking to the children of the forest. And to me, all this points to my belief that the White Walkers will be coming to Bloodraven's cave, and that's the reason Bran can't stay there, and Bloodraven may come to his demise here because Bran is essentially going to replace him. He's very, very old. I didn't really like the fact that they changed his look so much while he's in the cave. I thought, for example, that while he's in visions, maybe we'll see a younger Bloodraven, but he's got short hair this time, not the long hair of a typical guy in this time period, especially a Targaryen. And he has both eyes, and I was complaining about this back in season 4. Instead of missing one eye, and they're both regular colored, not red. So they could have done a little more homage to Bloodraven here, although I love Max von Sydow, but him looking like he does with short hair and both eyes for that matter really doesn't pay homage to Bloodraven. I did like the look of the older actor. I thought perhaps they may go with like the older look in the tree while they're actually in the cave, and then in the visions maybe he looked a little younger with his hair a little shorter or what have you. Oh well, it's good to see Bran back, and it's good to see these visions. We're really starting to get some stuff tied together here. But if you look at this scene here outside the cave, this doesn't look like the same entrance. You see all these roots and stuff here. I think these are the roots we saw in the behind the scenes and the teasers that I talked about where they will be on fire. Now I think that the children of the forest will use their Roman candles to actually light this on fire, as perhaps to ward off the White Walkers and Whites. They seem to be basically able to walk near it and put it out with the mist or whatever they control, since they control ice, although I do think Dragonfire is a different story. And then we go up to the wall. We have Sir Davos, and basically he's meeting Alistair Thorne here at the door where they're all locked in with Jon's body and goes, basically saying, you know what, it's time here, it's time to make a decision, there's no need to fight. And they did mention here that they will actually let Ghost go north of the wall where he belongs. This is when we see Davos pull out Longclaw, and then as they're breaking down the door, we see 1-1 in the gang come running to the rescue. That's right, Dolores said got to the wildlings. 1-1 bust up in there with the wildlings all behind him, him, and all the Night's Watch basically shit their breeches and basically put down their arms. They don't even want to fight. One guy tried, and this one dude lets one of his crossbow bolts loose into 1-1's shoulder. 1-1 grabs his ass, and Sir Patrick's his ass up against a wall. In the books, there was a scene similar to this, and this is where the Azor Ahai stuff comes in with Jon Snow in the books, at least, because Sir Patrick was a Queen's Guard of Selyse, and he had these stars on his cloak, and of course he became really, really bloody after 1-1 beat that ass, and some people believe that may be the bleeding star reference to the Azor Ahai prophecy. So the Night's Watch basically give up. They just don't have the numbers, and of course they're scared shitless of the giant 1-1 Waka 1-1, and they basically give up. Ed orders them into their prisons, and so basically the wildlings and Ed and that small group of Night's Watch members have now taken control of Castle Black. Ollie actually tried to charge Tormund Giantsbane, and Tormund just slapped him around and then threw him in somebody's arms. So my guess here is that Ollie's going to actually not be killed like we all want him to be. I think Ollie's going to have some kind of weird redemption arc, and he's going to be hanging out with the wildlings for a while. He'll hate him at first, just like he always has, but I think if he doesn't die in some way, shape, or form, that he will actually learn that, you know what, these are just regular people out to survive like the rest of us. Jon was right the whole damn time. Anyway, Tormund comes in the room to see Jon's body, and he's really kind of shocked about it, I think. And he's like, basically, I'll get the men to build a funeral pyre. And this is where I thought, okay, they're going to build a pyre, and then they're going to go with my fire theory, and we'll see it maybe next episode or episode after that. I was guessing episode 3, where we see Jon come back by a fire, but we'll get to that in just a few minutes. And then we go to King's Landing, and we have this asshole talking shit to some common folk about Cersei and the Walk of Shame. And he's talking about how big his leg is, which basically means it's really, really small. And anyway, he goes to take a piss after he's good and drunk, and then we see Sir Robert Strong, aka Franken Mountain, come up behind him. And damn, this was an awesome ass scene, I got to admit. I don't really like Cersei and all that shit, but I'll tell you what, this was a badass scene right here. He just damn straight up pushes his head against the wall and crushes his skull against the damn wall, similar to Oberyn, except he just did it with one damn hand. This was a straight up Friday the 13th Jason Voorhees moment right here. And it just shows you Cersei don't even have to be there. If he hears somebody talking shit about her, they fucking toast. And then we see Cersei leaving the Red Keep trying to go to Marcella's funeral, and Tommen had sent his Lannister guards to say, no, you stay in the Red Keep, you can't go. And they're a little bit nervous because Franken Mountain's standing right beside her, and he's just looking over like, just tell me, just let me know, just give me the fucking command, go ahead, tell me. So there could have been violence there, but she decides, you know what, I'll go back up, my son's the king, he told me to stay here. So this is going to start setting up some conflict between her and Tommen. And then we go over to Meereen, and Tyrion's having this conversation with Missandei and Grey Worm and Varys in the pyramid, and they're talking about the dragons, and this is where he talks about dragons don't do well in captivity. And this shows his knowledge of dragon lore and why Dany really needs him, because he has read about dragons his entire life. He dreamt about them as a child, and he basically explains to us what we've all been wondering as far as the show goes, is why the dragons got smaller and smaller and smaller. We heard Tywin tell that story to Joffrey at the time about how the skulls of the dragons used to be in the throne room, and they got smaller and smaller, and the last ones were the size of cats. Well, Tyrion actually explains why, because the last Targaryens who had dragons started chaining them up, started keeping them in pits or what have you, instead of letting them roam free like they did originally. So that was pretty cool that they explained why the last dragons got small and weak and died out. Now they do mention here that Slaver's Bay is basically back in the hands of the Masters and all the other cities as well. So basically everything Dany's done has been returned back to slavery. So I think this is going to set up Dany kind of getting a little bit of the Mad King in her and realizing who she is, fire and blood. She's going to kind of become a conqueror here soon. And this is where she may go end up in Volantis, where she meets Yara. She has no more ships. We saw they were burned. They're trying to investigate who did that. And this is going to probably tie into the Ironborn storyline. So then we have a great scene. Tyrion goes down to the Dragon Pit, and Val and I nailed this on the head in our prediction videos. He goes down to the crypts and he meets Rhaegal and Viserion face to face, and he walks down and he starts talking to him like, hey, I'm a friend of your mother's. Don't hurt me. I'm the help. Don't kill the help. And then of course we see a moment where Viserion or Rhaegal, one or the other, you couldn't really tell in the dark which was about to blow fire at his ass right in front of him, and he actually kind of jumps back and he stops. And he actually starts talking to the dragons like he's telling these stories about his childhood and how he dreamed of having dragons, and this kind of goes into some book stuff as well. He talks to these dragons like, you know, I can't believe you're real. And as he does this, he actually releases one of the collars around Viserion or Rhaegal's neck. He doesn't get burned, and then the other one, whether it was Rhaegal or Viserion, again, it was hard to tell which was which, he actually looks over and says, you know what, I know what this motherfucker's doing. He's letting us out. And he lowers his head and lets him take off his collar as well. So they had this little moment where they kind of bonded with Tyrion and they like him. So let the Tyrion Targaryen rumors fly. You know, I've not been sold on this theory 100% ever since I heard about it years ago. And this moment where they seem to really dig Tyrion kind of suggests that he may have Targaryen blood. Now, I don't know if that's absolutely necessary to have Targaryen blood and Dany's dragons just like you, because he did ask Missandei back in the pyramid, you've been around these dragons, right? They never hurt you, right? And she's like, no, they never hurt me. And we know Missandei doesn't have Targaryen blood. So this may or may not point to Tyrion being, you know, Dany's half-brother, the son of the Mad King. Perhaps he is Tyrion Targaryen, the third head of the dragon. Let the rumors and speculation fly. I'm all about it. I'm still not 100% sold on it, because I don't think you necessarily have to have dragon blood in order for the dragons to like you, because again, these dragons grew up around Grey Worm and Missandei and some of these other other people around Dany and they haven't killed them, so that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but Tyrion hasn't been there that long. But then again, Val and I were talking about this in our Tyrion prediction video, that they would have a bonding moment, and if they have a bonding moment, that seems to imply that Tyrion may actually be a Targaryen. Let me know what you think in the comments about that one. And then he goes back up the steps after they release him. They didn't immediately just like run out, they walk back in the darkness. And he walks up to Varys and he says, if I ever have an idea like that again, punch me in the damn face. And I'm assuming here they left the door open. And then we quickly go over to Braavos in a quick scene with Arya, and she's still blind Beth, or the blind beggar in the streets, and the waif comes up again. She hears the waif this time and picks up her stick and starts swinging it at her and getting her ass beat a little bit again. And I can't wait to see the waif get her ass kicked by Arya, mainly because of her shoes and her damn haircut. And as Arya's swinging the stick around blindly, the waif has kind of disappeared. She just walked off apparently, and Jaqen catches the stick and this time plays the game of faces with Arya and says, tell me a girl's name and I'll feed your ass tonight. She says, no one. She passed the game of faces. She is being accepted back into the House of Black and White. She's no longer on punishment, although she may still train a while blind. This is part of her training anyway in the book, so she will continue her training as a faceless man, learn some parkour, and eventually kick the waif's ass and perhaps just, you know, kill her. But damn, get a new haircut. And then we go to Winterfell, and Roose and Ramsay are having a conversation about Sansa still being missing. I was going to say last week when I originally tried to record my first review before I lost all my audio, that the guy that disappeared was probably the one with the hounds, who probably ran off to tell Ramsay that they came across, you know, Brienne and they had some help. So now they think Sansa is lost, at least for now, and they discuss getting rid of Jon Snow at the Wall because he is half Stark. And then you also have the new Lord Karstark in the room as well. Now this may be Harry Karstark because after Lord Karstark was killed, that's the one Robb beheaded for killing the Lannister cousins. The other two Karstark sons were killed, and that's why Lord Karstark wanted revenge in the first place. He had lost his son Eddard, and Jaime had killed Torrhen Karstark. So this should be Harrion, the new Lord of House Karstark, and he seems to be firmly with the Boltons, at least right now. And then the Maester comes in and says Fat Walda has given birth to a healthy baby boy. And Ramsay's just loving this shit, so he goes to congratulate his father, and how does he do it? He sticks a fucking knife in his heart. True to being the psychopath he is, he just kills his father right there in front of everybody. In my opinion, this was planned. Lord Karstark said right before this, we need some new blood in the north. And then Ramsay kills his father right there, and the Maester's like, oh shit. And he's like, you go out and send ravens to everybody in the north and tell them that Lord Bolton was killed by poison by our enemies. So then Ramsay sends for Fat Walda. He meets Fat Walda and says, oh, that's a cute little baby boy, and he holds him and all this stuff. Oh, a little brother, and says, have you seen Rouge? Where's Lord Bolton at? Yeah, come on, follow me, Fat Walda. Let's go right here to the kennels, because he's back here feeding the dogs like he usually does. What? You gonna walk up in there? You know Lord Bolton ain't in the damn kennels. He don't feed the dogs. So she walks into the kennels, and Ramsay locks the gate and then opens every single gate of all the dogs he had just told to shut the hell up. And he says, I am the Lord of Winterfell, and I like being an only child, and whistles, and all the damn dogs come running out. And we didn't see it, thank God, because we had a little baby. But Fat Walda, little brother, and Roose likely has all been now fed to the hounds. This tells me they're not going to be on crosses flayed in front of everybody because, again, as I mentioned previously in my trailer and teaser breakdowns, I didn't think the Bolton men, or any northern houses for that matter, would follow Ramsay if he openly killed his Lord Father. So they are going to blame it on poison, and he's going to be Lord of Winterfell now and Warden of the North by default. So this is going to set up the Battle of the Bastards and the big Battle of the North. Jon Snow versus Ramsay Bolton. Can't wait to fucking see it. And then we have a quick shot of Sansa, and they're in the woods somewhere camping out, and she's talking to Brienne about choices. And Sansa's saying here, I should have taken your offer the first time. What that's going to do is set up a little tension between her and Littlefinger. Littlefinger took off back to King's Landing and left her there with Ramsay fucking Bolton, and she's not too damn happy about it. So then she goes over to Theon. They have a little conversation. Theon basically admits all his wrongdoings to her. He's kind of getting to the point now of really completing his redemption arc and being Theon again here. He basically says they'll be able to protect you better than I ever could. And Sansa says, well, where will you go? And he says, home. So this is going to lead to Theon heading back to the Iron Islands. I'm hoping he makes it there, although it's very possible that he gets recaptured by the Boltons. We did see in the preview for episode 3 that Ramsay will receive a gift. This could be Theon being recaptured, although I'm thinking it's going to be Rickon. And speaking of the Iron Islands and Pike, we go over and we see Balon and Yara talking, and we hear that the Greyjoys are losing their hold in the north as far as the mainland, and Yara's like, what the hell are we doing? There's no need to kill more Ironborn because we can't ever hold mainland like we do the seas. And there was another little nod to the books here when she says, what are you trying to hold? Pine cones and rocks? And this is something she says during the King's Moot, something that's offered by Euron as far as, you know, I'm going to offer you all these places that we're going to conquer. And then as he heads out to go to bed or to the brothel or wherever the hell he's going, we see him on the infamous bridge scene from the books. It's played out a little differently on the show, obviously, and we finally meet Euron Greyjoy, his brother. After they have a short talk about how much they love each other, Euron throws his ass off the damn bridge. This is going to set up the King's Moot. And actually in the next scene, during the funeral scene where they send Balon off into the water to the drowned god, we hear Yara saying saying to Damphair, another brother of Euron, I'm going to find out who did this and feed them to the sharks while he's still alive. And he's like, you can do that if you become king, and the King's Moot will decide that. So this is setting up the King's Moot. This is where the Ironborn get together and discuss the next king of the Iron Islands. If Theon was there, he would be the next in line, obviously being Balon's son. Yara had seen him basically dead, as she called him, because he's not Theon anymore, according to her. Euron will start to take over the Iron Islands. He will win the King's Moot and be the new leader of the Ironborn. And this is going to start getting into some interesting storylines as far as Dany goes across the Never Sea. In the books, he is actually after the dragons as well, and sends his brother Victarion over to actually find Dany and bring her to Euron to marry and get the dragons as well, so he can take care of the damn world. But since Victarion's not in the show, this is going to set up Yara to do this storyline. She's going to be the one to go over and try to find Dany, and probably end up turning on her brother Euron. But one thing that pisses me off about the Euron character, and I've known this since they've introduced the actor and the screenshots and teasers and all that stuff came out before the season started, he's called the Crow's Eye because he's got one eye and wears an eye patch in the books, and he just doesn't look anything like what you would think a character looks like the way he's described. So I don't like how HBO does this with some of these characters. I mean, you know, for Christ's sake, an eye patch, what does that cost? $5? I mean, you can probably make one for 15 cents.
Then why don't you let me get a sip for 15 cents?
So next we'll see him be baptized, win the King's Moot, and that will set up some conflict between him and Yara. And then we go back to the wall, and this is when everything's settled down and they can walk freely apparently, and Davos goes to Mel's room saying, you know what? I need your help. I don't believe in your gods and all that, but I've seen you do some pretty spectacular shit. And luckily Mel had her choker on and took some of the potions or what have you to keep her young looking. And she's sitting by the fire and she's cold. Now Val and I had mentioned this in our predictions videos as well, that she will lose her religion, lose her faith, and she will lose her heat because she had always been able to keep warm. You know, she's anxious and depressed and apparently doesn't carry around any Xanax in her little vials. So he's basically asking her for some magical stuff here. He's not asking her for her religion. He says he's not a devout man, but he's basically saying, look, I've seen you do some pretty spectacular shit. Can you help out? You know, maybe have you seen this kind of stuff before? And she's like, yeah, I've seen a priest do it, but it should have been impossible. Of course, referring to Thoros of Myr and Beric Dondarrion because he had been resurrected 6 times. And this is where she has the conversation where everything I'd seen in the flames is a lie. It's all bullshit. And Davos is like, fuck them then. Fuck them all. I've seen you drink poison and live. I've seen you birth a shadow demon with the face of Stannis to kill somebody. Don't tell me you can't try. So apparently she agrees, and they go down to the room John's in. They had taken his clothes off, and she basically cleans his body with a rag, cleans the blood off, and she starts cutting some of his hair and throwing it into the fire and whispering some voodoo shit. And then she's kind of standing over his body, puts both of her hands like she's going to do CPR, and starts saying these words over and over. And then you're like, oh shit, man, they're gonna leave us hanging. And she damn tries again, and she says, please. Like, that's the magic word for real. And I was thinking here for a minute, well, you know what? Thoros of Myr, when he first resurrected Beric Dondarrion, he didn't really believe in the shit either. He just said the words, and all of a sudden he resurrected him. So I'm thinking, don't tell me Davos is going to whisper some shit that he heard her say, and he's going to pop back up. And I was like, oh shit, they're going to leave us hanging. And this is what I looked like watching this shit.
Come on, come on.
And then he fucking wakes up and goes, gasping for breath, and the motherfucker's back, and I was like, oh shit, it really happened. I mean, I was like, damn, we knew this was gonna happen, but it's like, we didn't really know it was gonna happen. And I've been saying since last season, look, he's gonna come back, he's Jon Snow, Jon Stark's gonna be resurrected, they have to say Jon Snow's dead, and yes, everybody knew this, but it was still fucking awesome to actually see. I mean, this was exciting as shit. So yes, Jon Snow lives, he's back. We'll see if he keeps the name Jon Snow for a little while. I'm assuming he will for a while until he finds out that he can be legitimized either through Robb, where he possibly has left a letter some point when he was king of the North, or perhaps Stannis had it written down on paper when he was king. Perhaps there's a piece of paper somewhere that will legitimize him, and he can take the name Jon Stark like he always wanted to. He is now free of his Night's Watch vows, so I'm very, very interested to see what happens, whether he goes out and kills at least one of them, although I know he's still going to be trying to do the right thing and trying to unify everybody. He's still got to at least take Alliser Thorne out at least, man. I know he don't want to kill Ollie because he's just like a little kid, he's misunderstood, and he just don't get it, and he hasn't really grown up yet and figured out what it's really all about as far as the real war to come. You got to at least take out Alliser Thorne. I mean, I like Thorne as a bad guy, but come on, man, you got to get a little bit of revenge before you head south, before you get the whole Battle for the North Winterfell thing going to unite the North against the White Walkers that's coming. So anyway, guys, this episode was fucking outstanding. This was a real Game of Thrones episode. It hit on a lot of things. It's starting to bring some stuff together. So we're at a really good time in this story where we're starting to get a few more answers without bringing up so many damn questions. This is a really balanced episode, so it was really good overall. Good storytelling, good script writing, all that good stuff. I think the number one moment would obviously be Jon coming back for most people, but I really liked how they brought Lyanna in this flashback, because you thought, okay, they're going to show Ned as a young guy and Benjen, that'd be kind of cool, but they brought Lyanna in here, and there was a reason for that, and that will be answered hopefully next week. We did get several hints that, you know, the White Walkers are coming to Bloodraven's Cave because they said Bran will not stay there forever. We at least got the introduction to Euron coming in with the Ironborn situation. That's going to eventually tie into Dany's storyline. She has no ships, and who's the only big family that has a bunch of damn ships left? So there's going to be a lot of cool, exciting stuff happening, but now it's like, I don't know if they can really outdo this moment. You know, Jon Snow opened his eyes, but I'm really curious to see how he reacts to that himself. Like, what the hell just happened? So I'm really interested to see Jon go through the concussion protocol. So anyway, guys, I was super pumped about this episode. This kind of made up for the lackluster episode 1. Also, I will be starting Q&As again this week. I'll try to do these weekly. So go ahead and leave me some questions in the comments below for the Q&A that will come after this video. So definitely be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, you can click here for my episode 1 review from last week, and I'll talk about a few things that will be set up for the rest of the season there as well. And you can also click here for the last video I did with Val from McCall's Geek on Danny's predictions for season 6. Obviously, they just basically touched on Danny's storyline in episode 1, so there's still plenty of time to see if those predictions hold true. So let me know what you think, guys. What'd you think about the episode? What'd you think about Jon finally coming back? It's all confirmed. Kit Harington, you can stop lying now. And as usual, thanks for all the support, you guys. Be sure to subscribe to get everything. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you, Willis.